Kofi was born on a night when the moon was full, round and bright in the sky. His mother, Afia, had gone through a long, tiring labor, but she was filled with joy when she finally held her newborn son. His father, Kojo, was equally overjoyed. As the midwives cleaned Kofi, they suddenly stopped and gasped. On his skin, they saw strange, swirling patterns. These were not like the simple birthmarks some babies had. These were different. The marks looked like ancient symbols, twisting and curling across his back. The midwives whispered among themselves, and Afia overheard their fearful words. "These are the marks of the prophecy," one of them said. Afia felt her heart race. The prophecy had been told in the village for many generations. It said that one day a child would be born with strange markings. They believed that this child would change the village's fate forever. No one knew for sure what would happen, but most people feared the worst. Kojo too had heard the stories as a child. He looked at his son, not with fear, but with deep concern. What would happen if the villagers saw these marks? Would they think Kofi was cursed? Would they turn against him and against them? From that moment, Kofi's life became one of isolation. His parents wrapped him tightly in cloth, always making sure that his markings were hidden. As he grew older, they told him never to take off his cloak, even in the heat of the sun. Kofi didn't understand why, but he trusted his parents. For 15 years, Kofi lived a life very different from the other children in the village. He wasn't allowed to play with them or go to the village market. His parents told him it was to keep him safe, but they never explained why. He often watched from the window as the other children ran through the fields, laughing and playing. He longed to join them, but he knew his parents wouldn't allow it. One evening, his curiosity could no longer be contained. As his parents slept, he slipped out of the hut. He spotted a group of boys from the village and rushed over, laughing and playing until one of them pulled his cloak. Then they noticed the strange markings on his skin. One of the children stopped and gasped, pointing at him. "Look at his back!" the child cried. The other children turned to see, their eyes widening with shock and fear. "It's the boy from the prophecy," another whispered. "The one with the cursed marks." The children ran off, shouting and telling everyone they passed about the boy with the strange skin. Soon the entire village knew about Kofi and his markings. The news reached the elders of the village, the oldest and most respected people who were in charge of making important decisions. The elders were wise, but they were also cautious. They had heard the stories of the prophecy since they were children, and they believed that Kofi's birth might bring danger to the village. That evening, the elders gathered outside Afia and Kojo's home. Their faces were grave, and they brought with them a sense of fear and urgency. "We have heard the whispers," one of the elders said, his voice stern. "The boy with the markings has been seen. This is a bad sign. The prophecy warns of a child who will bring ruin to our village." Afia and Kojo pleaded with the elders, their hearts breaking. "Please, he is just a child," Afia begged. "He has done nothing wrong. He is our son." But the elders were firm. "The prophecy is too dangerous to ignore," they said. "If the boy stays here, we may all suffer." Tears streamed down Afia's face as Kojo tried to hold back his own grief. They knew what the elders were saying, but they couldn't bear the thought of losing their only child. Still, the decision had been made. The village feared Kofi too much to let him stay. That night, under the light of the same full moon that had shone on the night of Kofi's birth, the village elders declared that Kofi must be banished. Afia and Kojo hugged their son tightly, their hearts heavy with sorrow. They packed him a small bundle of food and water and told him to leave the village, hoping that somehow he would find safety. Kofi, confused and hurt, walked into the dark wilderness alone. He didn't understand why the village had turned against him, and his heart ached with sadness. Kofi wandered through the wilderness for days, lost and frightened. The nights were cold, and the days were long. He had no place to sleep, and his food quickly ran out. His stomach growled with hunger, but he didn't know how to find food. He felt so alone. One day, after walking for hours, Kofi came across a small clearing in the forest. The grass was soft, and the sun shone down warmly on the open space. In the middle of the clearing, Kofi saw something that caught his eye. A young gazelle lying on the ground. Its leg was twisted, and it looked like it was in pain. Kofi felt sorry for the animal. He knelt down beside it, unsure of what to do. He touched the gazelle's leg gently, hoping to comfort it. Suddenly, Kofi felt warmth spreading through his hand. The strange markings on his skin began to glow faintly, and as he touched the gazelle's leg, something incredible happened. The wound on the gazelle's leg began to heal. The twisted bone straightened, and the animal's pain seemed to fade away. Within moments, the gazelle stood up on its feet, fully healed. It looked at Kofi for a brief moment, then darted off into the forest, its injury completely gone. Kofi stared at his hands in disbelief. The marks on his skin had faded back to normal, but he knew something incredible had just happened. He had healed the gazelle. Kofi continued to wander through the forest, but now he had a strange sense of wonder and curiosity. The marks on his skin weren't a curse after all. They were a gift. He didn't understand how it worked, but he knew that his hands had the power to heal. He healed rabbits with hurt legs, lizards with broken tails, and even a small fox that had been limping through the forest. Each time, the strange warmth flowed through him, and the animals were made whole again. Meanwhile, Afia and Kojo were heartbroken when they had to let Kofi go, but they couldn't leave him all alone in the wilderness. One afternoon, they decided to follow his trail in the forest, hoping to find him. When Kofi saw his parents stepping out from behind the trees, his heart leaped with joy. "Mama, Papa," he cried, running toward them. Tears filled his eyes as he hugged them tightly. "I missed you so much." Afia and Kojo hugged their son, their own eyes filled with tears. "We missed you too, Kofi," Afia said softly. "We are so sorry we couldn't protect you from the village." Kofi wiped his tears and smiled. "It's okay, Mama. I'm not sad anymore. I have something to show you." He led his parents to a bird that had fallen from a tree, its wing badly bent. Afia and Kojo watched as Kofi knelt beside the bird and gently touched it. His skin glowed, and the bird's wing began to heal before their eyes. Within moments, the bird flapped its wings and flew up into the air. Afia and Kojo stood in awe. You can heal?" Kojo asked, his voice filled with amazement. Kofi nodded, his eyes bright. "Yes, Papa. The markings, they aren't bad. They're special. I can help people too, not just animals. I want to help our village." Afia and Kojo knew that they couldn't keep Kofi's gift a secret anymore. The village needed to know the truth about their son, and they believed that his powers could bring great good to their people. They decided to return to the village and tell the elders about Kofi's healing abilities. When they arrived back at the village, the people were shocked to see them, especially Kofi. Some of the villagers still remembered the prophecy and were afraid, but Afia and Kojo stood before them with confidence. "Kofi is not cursed," Kojo told the villagers. "He has a gift that can heal the sick and injured." At first, the villagers were skeptical. They still feared the old stories, but then Kofi stepped forward. One of the village elders had a deep cut on his leg, which had been slow to heal for many weeks. Kofi knelt beside the elder and placed his hand on the wound. The warmth flowed through his hands, and the markings on his skin glowed. Before the villagers' eyes, the elder's wound closed up and healed completely. The elder stood, amazed and grateful. "This boy is not cursed," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "He is blessed." From that day on, the villagers no longer feared Kofi. Instead, they welcomed him as their healer. Kofi used his gift to help the sick and injured, and soon people from other villages began to come, seeking his help. Kofi had finally found his place in the village. He was no longer the boy with the strange markings. He was the boy who brought healing and hope to his people. And the prophecy that had once caused so much fear had brought them the greatest blessing they could have ever imagined. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this. Thank you for watching and see you next time.